What if people could trade their daily moods like currency? A Tuesday afternoon in a cafe. Imagine it begins not with a government or a laboratory or a grand experiment, but with something very small. Picture yourself sitting in a quiet cafe on a Tuesday afternoon, the clink of a spoon on porcelain, and the faint hiss of the espresso machine. Outside, traffic hums dully, but in here it's hushed. You're not sad, not angry, just flat. A grey sort of mood, that peculiar Tuesday feeling when nothing is terribly wrong, but nothing is exciting either. Across the little table, a friend sits, buzzing with energy. She just landed a new client and radiates the kind of bright, sparkling excitement that makes you want to go home and reorganize your spice rack alphabetically. Her eyes light up with an idea. "I'll trade you," she says. "I really need to calm down before this meeting. I'll give you a half hour of this top-of-the-world feeling for an hour of your calm gray." You've never done this before, and no one really has. The first exchange. You close your eyes. There's no machine, no technology, just intention. You picture your calm as a smooth, gray stone resting in your palm. Your friend imagines her excitement as a fizzing golden orb of light. And then in a way that feels like a gear shifting inside you, it happens. The sugar packets on the table suddenly seem brighter. A smile tugs at your mouth without asking permission. Ideas arrive like sparks, as though the world itself has tilted in your favor. Meanwhile, your friend exhales. Her foot stops tapping. She stares at the steam curling from her tea and whispers, "This is quiet." And in that small cafe, on an unremarkable Tuesday, the world changes forever. The messy early days. Of course, it wasn't smooth at first. The first weeks of this strange new ability were messy. No one knew what moods were worth. Was 10 minutes of joy worth an hour of calm? Was a flash of creativity equal to a full night of deep rest? Teenagers tried trading their Friday night excitement to their parents for a little Sunday morning serenity to help with homework. The results were absurd. Parents suddenly felt like sneaking off to rock concerts at 10 in the morning. Meanwhile, teenagers fell asleep right on their textbooks. It was bartering without rules, and the results were often hilarious. Agnes and the birth of anchors. The first real change came from someone unexpected. Agnes, a quiet pigeon keeper with a rooftop garden in the middle of a bustling city. Agnes lived in a state of unshakable patience. Her calm was not a mood that came and went, it was her foundation. One day, a frazzled stockbroker stumbled onto her rooftop, desperate. He offered her $1,000 for just 10 minutes of her patience. Agnes, with little need for money, but much empathy, agreed. She focused on the gentle rhythm of scattering birdseed, the soft coo of her pigeons, the complete absence of hurry. The young man sat down on a bucket. For the first time in weeks, his shoulders relaxed. He watched the birds fluttering and simply breathed. Word spread. People began calling it pigeon patience. Agnes became the first mood anchor. She didn't sell fleeting emotions. She lent her calm like a fireplace, lending warmth. People left her rooftop not buzzing with excitement, but settled, centered, and quietly whole. The echostones. Soon, the next domino fell. If moods could be traded, could they be stored? A group of engineers, jittery from too much late-night inspiration and short on steady focus, experimented in a garage. They tried water, crystals, even bread. Imagine buying toast infused with mild optimism, a strange breakfast. But one day they discovered that a special kind of quartz touched with silver could remember a mood. Hold the stone, focus your emotion, and it would carry a gentle echo of it. Later, anyone could hold the stone and feel a diluted version of that mood. The first echo stones were hilariously unreliable. You might expect mild amusement and instead get existential dread with a hint of hunger. So a poet was brought in, Lena. She argued that moods weren't simple colors, but textures, shades, and flavors. Not blue calm, but lakeside in October. Not yellow happy, but first sip of coffee on a Saturday morning. Suddenly, the language of moods became art. Mood emporiums appeared, quiet shops filled with velvet-lined cases of echo stones. Instead of asking for motivation, you might ask for the feeling of final 5 minutes of a marathon. Instead of courage, the feeling of comfortable silence with an old friend. People collected them like emotional jewelry, each stone a little pocket of weather for the soul. And so, from one Tuesday afternoon in a cafe to a rooftop full of pigeons to a velvet-lined shop of glowing stones, the world began its slow, whimsical transformation. When moods became currency, with echo stones spreading through quiet mood emporiums, it didn't take long for people to realize something important. If moods could be traded and stored, then, like any other resource, they needed some kind of regulation. But how do you regulate something as deeply personal as happiness, as calm, as wonder? No one wanted strict laws. Instead, governments suggested something softer, something almost parental. A recommendation: keep an emotional minimum, a baseline of moods you should never trade away completely. The emotional audit. To help people maintain this balance, a new profession emerged, the emotional auditor. Imagine stepping into their office. It feels less like a bank and more like a cozy observatory. The air smells faintly of sandalwood. On the desk sits a strange brass device, part clock, part astrolabe, with delicate rings that spin gently around a glowing crystal. You place your hand on the device. It doesn't read your thoughts, only your emotional baseline. The crystal pulses with soft colors. On the auditor's screen appear not charts or numbers, but patterns that look like shifting weather maps. The auditor murmurs softly, "You're running a little low on spontaneous laughter, and your quiet wonder is down to a drizzle. I'd recommend holding on to what you have for a while. Maybe take a walk in the woods, watch a genuinely funny film, let your garden replenish." And there's no penalty for being emotionally overdrawn. Just gentle advice, and people loved it. Auditors became some of the most trusted figures in society. Not judges, not bankers, but empathetic guides, quietly helping people tend their inner gardens. Mood emporiums, now organized. Thanks to Lena's emotional lexicon, echo stones became more refined. Shops no longer carried vague stones labeled happy or sad. Instead, the shelves gleamed with names like solving a difficult puzzle at midnight, afternoon nap in a sunbeam, the final page of a very long book. People began collecting moods like others once collected teacups or stamps. Velvet boxes in homes held personal libraries of feeling. A small afternoon napstone for after work. A gentle rainfall on a tin roof. Stone by the bedside. Interior design shifted almost overnight. New homes came with recessed shelves designed for echo stones. Living rooms glowed faintly with a curated blend of warm laughter and steady curiosity. Bedrooms hummed with deep rest and dreamless sleep. Emotions had become part of architecture. Mood anchors gain respect. And then there were the anchors, people like Agnes with her rooftop pigeons. Not everyone had the rare ability to radiate a stable mood so strongly that others could borrow it just by sitting nearby. But those who did became almost revered. Anchors were like living lighthouses in a stormy world of traded, fragmented feelings. And you could sit with one for an hour and leave with your soul untangled. Some corporations even employed anchors in staff lounges, not for productivity, but for balance, to remind their employees what steady felt like. The first gentle warnings. But of course, whenever a new currency emerges, some people can't resist pushing the limits. There were stories of overtraders, people who gave away all their joy for quick bursts of energy, or those who sold their calm until they were nothing but raw nerves. And so the public advisories began. Posters in subway stations showed a cheerful gardener with the words, "Keep your roots. Don't trade away the moods that hold you steady." Children learned about it in schools, not in stern lectures, but through gentle lessons. Would you give away all your laughter if you couldn't get it back? A teacher might ask, and the class would giggle and shake their heads. As the message settled in, moods were precious to be shared wisely. The emergence of mood prospectors. Then inevitably came the question, where do the rarer moods come from? You couldn't always rely on city life for something as delicate as the feeling of witnessing a shooting star in absolute silence. So a new profession appeared, mood prospectors. They weren't miners of stone or oil. They were seekers of experiences, part naturalist, part poet, part patient dreamer. They wandered mountains, deserts, forests, and oceans, searching for moods in the wild. And imagine one of them, Elias, sitting in a vast desert under a velvet black sky. He waits still as stone for a shooting star, not to see it, but to capture the fleeting mood it leaves behind. Awe, wonder, smallness in the face of the universe. With his delicate resonant sieve, Elias catches the feeling and later transfers it into an echo stone. Handled perfectly, the stone glows faintly, and anyone who holds it will feel that quiet cosmic awe no matter where they are. A hierarchy of feeling. Soon moods developed a hierarchy. Common moods were farmed in controlled environments, serene gardens, lively amusement parks, cozy libraries, pleasant but ordinary. Artisanal moods came from prospectors, rare, specific, unrepeatable, like the smell of rain on hot asphalt in Paris. And then came the forgeries, synthetic moods cooked up in labs, tried to mimic the real thing, but they always felt tinny. Like listening to an orchestra through a phone speaker. You recognize the tune, but the soul is missing. Real moods had beginnings, middles, and ends. Synthetic ones offered only the peak moment, leaving behind an emotional aftertaste like disappointment. And so culture shifted again. Authenticity became more valuable than intensity. People realized the most precious feelings weren't the loudest, they were the truest. And so the world moved from bartering moods in cafes to mood emporiums, auditors, anchors, and prospectors. A society that once measured itself in money was beginning to measure itself in moments. Moods at the office. For most people, the most noticeable changes weren't in emporiums or on mountaintops with prospectors. They happened in the ordinary places, especially at work. Imagine stepping into your office on a Wednesday morning. In our world, the mood is a haphazard mix. One person's stress, another's caffeine buzz, a few yawns, and the usual hum of mild anxiety. But here, the atmosphere is curated. The first thing you notice is the scent, not stale air, not coffee, but petrichor. that earthy fragrance of rain on dry ground. It's the signature of the mood curator, a new kind of professional. Their job is not design or lighting or workflow, it's the emotional climate. They are, in essence, emotional interior designers, the emotional diffuser. Step into a curator's office and it looks more like an apothecary than a corporate suite. Shelves of raw echo stones sit in glass jars, labeled and organized by clarity and strength. On the desk, instead of a computer, there's a sleek console that resembles a soundboard, except with glowing stone slots instead of knobs. This is the emotional diffuser. By placing combinations of stones into the console, the curator broadcasts a subtle mood blend throughout the building's ventilation system. Today's mix is called Quiet Canopy. It has 3 layers, a base of deep focus harvested from a chess grandmaster mid-tournament, a middle note of gentle collaboration, captured from gardeners tending a shared plot, and a top note of underlying optimism, sourced from school children on the last day before summer break. The effect is remarkable. Conversations flow easily. No sharp words, no raised voices. The usual edge of anxiety has simply dissolved. The problem of disruptions. But even the best curated atmosphere has cracks. Picture yourself at your desk. The room is humming with Quiet Canopy. Then an email arrives, a frustrating, unnecessary request from another department. In our world, you might sigh, roll your eyes, or type a sharp reply. But here, that flash of irritation feels like a loud cough in a cathedral. Everyone may not know exactly what you're feeling, but they feel the disruption. So what do? You excuse yourself and head to a discreet door marked the venting room. The venting room. The earliest attempts at venting were clumsy. One company tried a rage cage, a soundproof booth where employees were encouraged to scream. It left people exhausted. Another invented a sorrow sponge, a moss-covered room where you could cry into glowing bioluminescent plants. It turned out to be damp, uncomfortable, and oddly depressing. The venting room was the elegant solution. Inside is nothing but white walls and a single black ceramic drain in the floor, the emotional siphon. You stand over it, breathe deeply, and focus on your irritation. There's a cool, pulling sensation, as if the frustration is being gently lifted from your chest. Then it's gone. No drama, no exhaustion, just neutrality. You return to the office atmosphere of Quiet Canopy as though nothing ever happened. The question of where it all goes. But of course, this leads to another question. Where does it go? Every venting room, every school, every hospital, every public building, all siphon off negative emotions into shielded pipes beneath the city. Once a week, before dawn, a special truck arrives. It looks like a cross between a street sweeper and an armored car. The workers, wrapped in thick coveralls, handle not physical trash, but emotional runoff, what people call the muddle. It's a sludgy, chaotic soup of frustration, jealousy, boredom, and despair. The sanitation workers are famously cheerful people, known for humming silly songs as they work. It takes a certain kind of resilience to handle the muddle without absorbing it. For a long time, the muddle was simply incinerated in massive furnaces, neutralized into harmless energy. But then came a peculiar group with a new idea: emotional alchemists. Emotional alchemists. Alchemists argued that waste was a failure of imagination. Why burn emotions when you could distill them? Their workshops looked like distilleries crossed with laboratories. Rows of glass columns and copper pipes burbled gently as the muddle was heated, separated, and siphoned into distinct feelings. Light, volatile irritations rose first. Heavier, denser melancholy settled last. What emerged were purified essences of emotion, bottled, labeled, and astonishingly useful. Who wanted these strange materials? Artists. Art from distilled feelings. A sculptor could carve marble infused with the feeling of a forgotten memory. The finished statue would radiate bittersweet nostalgia, not an idea of it, but the direct sensation shared with every viewer. Painters mixed pigments with emotional essences. The blue laced with the solitude of a lighthouse keeper gave an ocean scene aching depth. A red infused with the frustration of a failed experiment exploded with restless energy. Galleries changed forever. Paintings and sculptures were accompanied not only by title and artist, but by emotional palette. You might see The Watcher by Ishmael Cain, oil on canvas, palette, filtered melancholy, industrial resignation, and a grace note of hope sourced from a prospector in the Arctic. Standing before it, you wouldn't just look, you'd feel it, not unpleasantly, but deeply, as though connected to the artist's own heart. And so, a petty annoyance vented into a ceramic drain on a Wednesday morning might one day reappear as a masterpiece in a museum. Frustration transformed into beauty. A strange cycle. The cycle was poetic. Irritation became muddle. Muddle became essence. Essence became art, and art in turn became a mirror that helped people feel less alone. Negative moods were no longer seen as waste. They were raw material for something meaningful. And so, through venting rooms, muddle trucks, and alchemist workshops, the world discovered that even our worst emotions had hidden value, waiting to be reshaped into something enduring. When feelings entered the courts, art may have embraced distilled emotions with open arms, but the real test came when feelings found their way into the most rigid of human systems, the law. At first it was clumsy. Contracts began including vague mood clauses, phrases like both parties must maintain a positive outlook during the project. It led to absurd disputes. One baker claimed his supplier had breached contract because while the flour was delivered on time and perfectly fine, the delivery man simply wasn't cheerful enough. Clearly, something better was needed. The binding stone. That solution came in the form of the binding stone. Imagine sitting in a lawyer's office, not a grand wood-paneled one, but a small, quiet room with faintly glowing lamps and the scent of cedar in the air. Beside the contract lies a smooth, dark, gray stone the size of your palm. The lawyer explains softly, the paper holds the logic of your agreement, but the stone holds the intent. Both parties place their hands on it, focusing not on clauses or loopholes, but on a single specific mood, honest agreement and mutual understanding. The stone absorbs it. From that moment, it becomes part of the contract itself. And if a dispute arises later, the binding stone can be examined by an auditor. The crystal device shows whether the agreement was genuine, whether hidden resentment was present, or whether it was made under duress. It shifted law away from wordplay and toward honoring the spirit of the deal. Courtrooms reimagined. Now imagine stepping into a trial. The room is circular, acoustics soft to prevent shouting. The judge, now called the adjudicator, sits at the same level as everyone else. The ambient mood, by law, is carefully maintained as neutral, clear, and balanced. It is called the glass plane. Today's case is not a crime of violence, but of creativity. A young musician accuses a famous artist of stealing his melody. The notes are similar, but not identical. In our world, this would devolve into experts and counter-experts. Here, the key figure is an empath witness. The empath witness. Her name is Lena, the same poet who, years ago, created the emotional lexicon for echo stones. Her gift for nuance has made her one of the first professionals in this strange new field. She wears a delicate headset, a silver filigree resting on her temples, with a flawless crystal suspended before her forehead. It doesn't read thoughts. It filters the surrounding noise so she can perceive a single person's emotional resonance. The adjudicator turns to the famous musician. "Please recall the moment you composed your song," he says gently. The man closes his eyes. Lena watches the crystal. It flickers with soft rosy pink, fondness, a flash of bright blue discovery. The light shimmers with surprise, the resonance of authentic joy. "This is genuine," she reports. "The feeling is one of finding, not stealing." Next, the young accuser is asked to recall his composition. The crystal glows with fiery orange, passion, purple, longing, and then sharp jagged red mixed with gray. Lena nods softly. This too is genuine. His creation was authentic, but when he heard the other's song, what he felt was not theft. It was the sting of having been discovered second, a very specific form of disappointment. And in that moment, the case changes shape. No villain, no thief, just two artists who stumbled onto the same river of inspiration. The resolution becomes collaboration, not punishment. A different kind of justice. This new system transformed more than contracts. Crimes of passion, once treated with blunt retribution, could now be examined with precision. An adjudicator might see that a violent act arose from a sudden, raw surge of fury, not years of malice. Punishment shifted toward therapy, balance, and rehabilitation. Prisons began to shrink. In their place grew emotional rehabilitation centers, quiet, monastery-like places where people learned to tend their moods, to understand the storms within them. A society more forgiving. When you could see the emotional story behind an action, it became harder to condemn with simple labels. Someone who once would have been dismissed as cruel might now be understood as wounded and unbalanced. The law itself began to nurture empathy. Justice no longer meant cutting people down, but guiding them back into harmony. And so, through binding stones, empath witnesses, and adjudicators on the glass plane, society discovered something quietly radical. That truth was not just what happened, but how it was felt. The classroom of emotional weather. The last ripples of this new world weren't felt in emporiums or courts or galleries. They were felt in the two places that shape the future more than any others, the classroom and the home. Imagine a kindergarten. In our world, it is a beautiful storm. 5-year-olds bouncing with joy, frustration, curiosity, and tears all at once. But here the storm has a gentle order. The children sit in a circle on woolen rugs. In the center stands a shallow bowl of milky glass filled with a clear, viscous liquid. It is the centerpiece of the day's most important subject, emotional weather. A little girl, Maya, is lonely. Her best friend is homesick. The liquid in the bowl shifts, mist curling into soft gray shapes, and the teacher doesn't scold or say, Don't be sad. Instead, he gestures gently where, look, class, Maya's weather is a little rainy today, and that's okay. Rain helps the garden grow. What do we do when a friend has rainy weather? A boy beside her closes his eyes. He offers not forced joy, but a simple feeling, the warmth of sitting under a blanket. In the bowl, a soft yellow glow mingles with the gray. Maya doesn't stop, missing her friend, but her sadness is wrapped now in warmth. From the very start of their lives, these children learn that moods are not enemies to suppress, but weather to notice, tend, and share. And just as a child's weather could be seen, so too could a nation's. In the global newsroom of this world, a vast holographic globe floats above the anchor's desk. Not maps of borders, not weather systems, but fields of shifting emotional color. A wave of vibrant gold and green pulses over Brazil during Carnival. A deep blue of collective focus stretches across Central Europe on a weekday morning. A shadow of gray anxiety lingers on North America's east coast as a hurricane approaches. The anchor's calm voice explains international aid organizations are preparing not only food and shelter, but also vast emotional diffusers, preloaded with communal resilience and steadfast hope. These will be deployed to help steady those affected. Diplomacy changes too. No one attempts peace negotiations while a nation is steeped in grief. Leaders wait, offer support, respect the weather. The sharp edges of politics soften in the awareness that countries, like people, need time for storms to pass. And yet with all this trading and curating, with echo stones and muddle trucks and binding stones, a quiet discovery was made. Some moods, perhaps the most important, could not be traded at all. The profound layered love a parent feels for a child, the aching grief for a lost partner, the deep, wordless contentment of a life well lived. These were woven too tightly into memory, identity, and soul. They were not surface weather, but bedrock. No prospector could bottle them, and no stone could hold them. They were beyond commerce.